Hello and welcome everyone to the Game On panel, part of the blooloop Festival of Innovation 2024. We are here to discuss this Game On category and all things gaming, VR, AR, live immersive experiences, and everything in between. And then at the end of this session, we will be announcing the winners of this year's Game On category award. I'm joined by two esteemed guests today, and I will pass over now and let them introduce themselves. So maybe over to you first, Jeffrey.
Thanks, Tom. My name is Jeffrey Godsick. I work at Sony Pictures, where I work in a number of different areas, overseeing global partnerships, VR as it relates specifically to gaming and experiential, and then location-based entertainment. Happy to be here today.
Likewise. And Matt?
Hi, Matt Palmer. I'm a part of an organization called BRITE Management. We're fairly new to the field, but we have a lot of players that have been in the game for a long time. Our primary focus is on helping to develop and operate primarily location-based entertainment experiences, following much along the lines of what Jeffrey explained, primarily in the US, but we will expand globally. But we've formed this organization about a year ago, and we are up and operating in a few different spaces already, and we have many more to come. But I oversee marketing and sales for each of the locations that we operate and will be opening, and on behalf of the organization.
Thanks, Matt. And my name's Tom Lionetti-Maguire. I'm the CEO of Little Lion Entertainment. We're one of the premier immersive experience companies in the UK. We employ over 300 people in this industry. And some of the experiences that we've created and are in our roster are the Crystal Maze attractions in the UK and internationally, the Tomb Raider live experience, Chaos Carts, and the Pac-Man live experience. Are those currently in the roster, but there's many more to come. So Jeffrey and Matt, you're both based in the US, is that right?
Correct. Mm-hmm. We're both on the West Coast.
Oh wow, jealous. It's very cold in London right now. I wish I was in LA. So I actually my first question is a little bit off book. Is have either of you found that there's a difference between this kind of immersive attraction industry in stateside compared to Europe or compared to the UK? I mean, perhaps a little bit biased, but London seems to be one of the epicenters for new experiences, and I wonder how you see that vis-a-vis the what's going on stateside.
Why don't you go ahead?
Thanks, Jeff. I think it all comes down to the audience and the market. The first thing that strikes me is footprint and where you locate. I think once you look at that and where you're going to put something, it's all about the audience that's going to come and which part of the market. Let's say it's the UK that you're in. But the hunger and the excitement for immersive entertainment, I think, is ubiquitous globally. I think all audiences are excited about it. I think when there's digital overlays that are interesting, it's even more exciting. But even when it gets down just to the brass tacks of just having an unplugged experience, people like to be absorbed and sort of get out of the digital world a bit. But even with VR and immersion entertainment that goes as deep as that, I think there's intrigue, there's interest, and there are people that just want to find out what it's about and get into it. So it's a growing market. I think there's a hunger for it. I don't perceive a huge difference between certainly UK. I think if you look at other parts of the world, whether it's Europe or UAE, I think the audiences are all very similar, but there may be programmatic elements that are different culturally or based on religion or just how those markets operate, or also how tourism operates in those markets and what you open up for local versus inbound potential guests. So that would be my take on your question right out of the gate off the top of my head. So Jeffrey, over to you.
I mean, I'm pretty much in the same kind of thinking. I do think there's similarities between behavior patterns among UK audiences and the US. We see that in experiential, we see that in movies, we see that in TV. I mean, there's just that kind of English language speaking correlation. And I think in other parts of Europe, it does different, again, depending on a lot of situations. We're facing a coming out of the pandemic and then slapped with the economic difficulties that were around the world that slowly different countries are coming out of. But we saw so much impact, in that in general, that you'll see some markets come back quicker, like the UK did, the US now kind of beginning to come back. But even some of the behavioral shifts in the US, we didn't really predict. Things like Thursday night becoming replacing Friday as the night to go out. And that's because less people are working in offices. And if they are going to work remotely, the one day that seems to be unanimous is Fridays. So instead of everybody after work on, hey, let's go out, they're not together to say that, but they are on Thursdays. So that shift, just one of the many, many unexpected kinds of shifts that we've seen. But in essence, I do think that hunger for experiences, the hunger for social interaction, the hunger for competitive social interaction is growing tremendously. It's growing with urgency in different ways. If something is coming into your market, whether it's Taylor Swift that comes in for 2 days or the Friends exhibition that comes in maybe for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that, if there's a limited time to see it, that's driving people in a big way. If it's always there, then it's facing some new challenges that are coming from these kind of behavioral shifts. But I think in the essence, people do want and are craving the need to experience different things. And especially Gen Z and millennials, they will save money for those experiences much more than they will spend on material items.
Yeah. And Matt, you speak of a ubiquity, and Jeffrey, you of a hunger. And what I like to say is that I believe this, and it's similar in the ancillary worlds like theme parks, and also I would say theatre. But these attractions, these experiences are both universal and also they're timeless. I think I have to believe, I have to hope, as someone in this industry, that people will continue to want to have shared experiences together. They'll continue to want to have these moments of social interaction, and long may it continue. But Jeffrey, you speak of shifts, and nonetheless things have changed. What things do you think sort of impact them? Is it price? Is it people moving away from more F&B, particularly B type industries, less drinking, more family entertainment, more sort of new entertainment? What other shifts do you think have taken hold?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things, to be honest. I don't think there is any one issue. The economy absolutely has had an impact. People have less money to spend almost across the globe. And because of that, they need to be more discriminating on what they spend. That goes back to that urgency thing we were talking about a little while ago. If something's coming to your market for a limited time, you're gonna know about it. You're gonna make it an appointment destination. You're gonna save for it so you can go. And that with more discrimination, because people don't have as much money to spend, is something we have to take into account a lot. I do think there was an article in the New York Times 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I forget the exact headline, but it was along the lines of something like, America has become a nation of homebodies. Well, that's a combination of post-pandemic comfortability of like, well, I can stay home and there's a lot of good stuff here. I get a lot of movies on my streaming service. I get a lot of great television programming, gaming, different things. But for those in the location-based world, homebodies are contrary to that idea. That's not really what we want. Yes, eventually when we, release a movie first in theaters, but eventually at home, we're happy that you see it. But we in the location-based business need people to go out to the locations. So that kind of comfortability of being home, plus the combination that they don't have as much money to spend, are things that are really affecting our business in a great way. And we have to take into consideration, I think, in everything we do. And I'm not sure we even can predict yet exactly where the future will be and how quick that kind of recovery will be.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, weirdly, in the UK, this is quite prevalent. Things like the nightclub industries are really struggling. We in LBE have actually found that we are absorbing some of those customers, particularly younger customers who are, I can't quite put my finger on it, but perhaps looking for a more wholesome experience, an experience that it isn't totally around alcohol, and something that is new and modern and fun. Also shareable is a big part of that. Matt, are there any sort of trends that you've seen or that follow on from any of that?
Well, I think there's one layer here we should recognize that's really evolved over the last 5 years, which is the IP, the access to IP. And Jeffrey knows this better than anybody in his business, and what he's done with Wonderverse, just putting Ghostbusters, that bar that you created, it's like the more IP that becomes available and the shift to making it available, and that opens doors to people that recognize it, but also allows us to reinvent it and work with it in ways that are unique, that extend the franchise. So people's appetite to do more in an FEC space or an LBE space like we have, when they're tied to really strong IP, is much more motivational than just generic, IP that has been out there for years and decades prior to this. It's all about to get it in the go-kart and, go around the track 5 times. But if it's a Mario Kart, that's a whole different ballgame. Like, you're creating worlds here that people haven't seen. And I think now IP holders, and certainly the motivation to build franchise empires, is open the doors to the LBE industry in unique ways. It kind of fell strongly and most succinctly on the destination resort, markets, Orlando, LA, where they could afford that IP and they could build out a Harry Potter world and, and create those spaces and pay those fees. Now we're seeing it start to proliferate down at the LBE. We're raising the experiential impact and what it's like, and it's coming up to a theme park level at an LBE space. And I think people are recognizing that, and they're seeing the value in that, in going and spending that time and deferring, going to the clubs and going into a space where, whether it's VR or whatever is in there, is more impactful to them.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that. When we first opened our first Crystal Maze 10 years ago, the way that I used to describe it for ease to people was, it's like a small indoor theme park, because it was 4 worlds built across 40,000 square foot. But that was the best way to encapsulate it. Jeffrey, do you see that as the someone who deals with a lot of big IP all the time? Do you see that as IP just an extension of the rest of the world, of what you're making, through film and other? And do you see these LBE, FEC type attractions as, I always see it as the premium front end, and it's something that a customer can feel and touch and really, feel like they have a relationship with?
They do. And fanship, it has a range of passion. There are people who want to know every single thing about something, and there are people who are more casual participants of a particular IP. But in general, we see IP of interest, across the board in the world. We know the value of it. We know that it can elevate things, and we see that in a variety of different examples, from even some of our hotel partners that have themed rooms and can sell them for 35 to 40% more, and they're sold out 3 months in advance. It's all because it's an experiential extension. We have a couple of attractions based on Jumanji with Merlin, and one of them is at Gardaland in Italy. And we have, I think, 3 Jumanji themed rooms, and they're really well done. Like, you open the door and the drums start beating, and it's all tropical, and there's games incorporated. And I had heard this as a rumor, but it's really true, because somebody knocked on my door when I was in my room and they said, "Can we see your room?" And I said, "What?" They actually, because they're such fans of Jumanji, and there are only 3 rooms, they couldn't get one. And it happened twice. And I didn't believe when people told me, "Oh yeah, people will knock on your room because they just want to see it." Well, that's because they love an IP. That's because they want to experience an IP in a different way that is different from watching it on a screen or reading it in a book. It's a different kind of immersion. And you see, I mean, and that's just a very, very small example, all the way to the examples of, you know, when people looked at what Disney paid for 20th Century Fox to acquire the library, or for Pixar, or for Lucas or Marvel, you know, billions and billions of dollars to acquire more IP for the library to, yes, make other content, but to also put through their entire pipeline. So we continue to see that as a major, major motivator.
And do you think, because there has been sort of an incursion in European cities into more like the high street, but also in America, you know, with big IPs, but also things like Meow Wolf going into the outskirts of cities. It's not just the preserve of theme parks anymore. And Matt, as you were saying, the level is high. The bar is high. I mean, is it almost it's a different thing and a, you know, a different price point, sure, but is it a challenge to theme parks?
I would, to answer your question, is it a challenge to theme parks? Absolutely. I think it's, I mean, the theme park, I mean, if you look at Universal right now, they're starting to experiment with this with Halloween Horror Nights as an extension in Vegas. Okay. They're recognizing there's a void. The LBE market sort of situated, you know, you've got your regional destinations, you've got your primary destinations markets, the regional parks, you know, below that, LBE is a wide opportunity. And I think they're realizing now, the big players, that they're missing the boat on that as an elevated LBE experience, because that market doesn't exist. We're creating it right now. And I think that's exciting, both for theme parks, but also they see us as robbing them as an opportunity. And even look at Universal building in Frisco. I mean, it's a decent sized footprint, but it's a regional park. So again, it's above LBE, but they're experimenting in that. And I think Disney's going to lean into that more and more. But for us, it's an endless opportunity. And I think the IP, to go back to that, as a game changer. There's another perspective I was thinking about as Jeffrey was talking, which is, depending on the IP, if you look at our partners, Hasbro and Crayola are our primary partners. They're heritage brands. And you take the attraction that we opened in June in New Jersey, Planet Play School, there's a nostalgic brand that is new to kids, but some kids know it, but it has heritage presence with parents. And now we're bringing together family entertainment experiences that bring in product and experiences that maybe parents haven't thought about a while, but they played with Tinker Toys as a kid. Or maybe in the case of Crayola, we all used crayons as a kid, but we revisit with our children, and the smell and all of that comes back. Like, we're creating opportunities with IP that bring families together, entertainment together across different demographics, which is unique. And yes, the theme parks are doing that, but I think for LBE, that's even more interesting, because you could bring more of that group together based on economic feasibility without having to travel. Now it's an event to travel to Orlando. That's like a bucket list item now, not an annual thing. You can't, you know, who can afford it? It's becoming very challenging. So the LBE market is elevating into a space that's needed right now to fill that void. So the bucket list that's now was once a year is now every couple of years. We have stuff we can offer locally that kids and adults will both enjoy.
Yeah, and if it's that cheaper price point, it is something you can do several times a year. I'm not saying that the LBE midway type industry is nascent, but it does feel like there's a lot of players, a lot of smaller, interesting companies, and at perhaps a more macro level, one does feel that someone's going to start coming in and gobbling a lot of these companies up. I think that's inevitable. But on those, you know, slightly smaller companies and innovation and people doing interesting things, you know, including or not some of the great concepts that were submitted within this very category, Is there anything that you guys have seen in the last year, be it in the States or internationally, that you've really been excited about, or is there anything sort of new that is coming up that you see as an exciting future trend?
Matt, you want to go first, or?
I'm trying to think what comes to mind. I mean, it's all about the marriage for me of technology with the experience. You know, when you can make something as amazing as you did with like Van Gogh, it's projected art. You know, how do you start to layer that into a VR experience or create new experiences using technology, but also make it very hands-on and unique? I think there's still a lot of work to do about how to pull this social gamification into the experience. We have a very unique opportunity at BRITE working with Hasbro with the Nerf brand. So we are due to launch a Nerf action experience in partnership with them in New Jersey, right above our Planet Play School, and also in Pigeon Forge next year, both of those next year. And that's interesting because that demographic's even bigger than most brands ever enjoy, from little kids all the way to adults. And all of them still have a love for it. So it's one thing to come in and have an experience in the space, but how do we open it as a marketer? I'm always, how do I extend that? And I think digital opportunities to really gamify that and share it. This isn't new, but it's not a new idea, but certain brands fit this really well, whether it's competitiveness, an eagerness to share something that, like when I was a kid, this is what I did, and I'm doing it with my kids or with others I've met. Enabling that digitally through an app or whatever that technology is that captures you, gives you content to share, and you're ranking on a board, and suddenly there's 3 or 4 Nerf locations, and now there's competitions between locations. Like that kind of stuff, I think is where I see the excitement growing for not only the guests, but for us as marketers and operators to keep engaged and keep people coming back. That's always the thing that we deal with, is how do we engage and re-engage and get people to come back on repeatability with LBE. And this kind of technology, if we can layer it in right and find that happy medium and get the usage, I think will do wonders for us, for the right brands.
I know personally, I took our HQ team to Tokyo last year, and we went and saw Team Labs Planets, and that intersection of immersion and storytelling and technology, but also underwritten by an execution that was really 10 out of 10. It's one of the best things I've ever seen in my life, and it was mind blowing. It was seriously mind blowing. But Jeffrey, what about you? Is there anything that you've seen that you particularly liked, or something that's perhaps coming out in the near future that you're excited about?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think one of the things that's really unique about the time we're in is that people seem to be willing to spend great deals of money to still experiment, to solve and carve that path out, and not to discuss whether these things pencil or not. But when you begin to look at, technology like the Sphere or COSM or even ABBA Voyage, which is, as you point out in the UK, they're selling out every night and clubs are dying. But there are so many great experiences in the UK. It's a leading place. So that kind of technology, which will lead to lots of other things, is so important. What's interesting, I think, to distinguish between what you were just bringing up of Team Labs and what Matt was talking about is something like Team Labs, which I agree with you. I go to Tokyo a lot, and I go to Team Labs every time. And but Team Labs and Meow Wolf and Otherworld, these are things created by artists and scientists, which is very different, to be honest, than creating something from an IP. Because a lot of times the artists and scientists are not even designing it for commercial means. They're designing it because they want to, express their art in different ways. And I think that that combination, learning from that, learning from how they do so well to create their own IP, really, and their own characters, we can learn from that. And we have to learn from that. So, I do think some of these kind of domed projection opportunities are staggering to look at. And I think you'll find lots of technology moving in that way. I do think technology has a place where it has to be a balance, that there has to be technology you're seeing and you know overtly this is technology, but also some that is a subtlety that you might not realize it's technology. You might not realize that it's interacting with you because of a band you're wearing or something like that, because it's so genuine, it's so analog in some of its sense. So I do think that people want that balance. We're spending a lot of time looking at digital means to figure out how can we take the same space and create multiple attractions in it without having to literally, take the walls apart and put in new stuff. And one way is digitally. And I don't mean through VR and MR, but that can also be part of the experience, because the quality now, especially with MR, is even, it's so wonderful from where it's reached so far, but now it's so much more accessible because you are not just, because you can see through the goggles, obviously. So I think it's about that kind of balance, but you're going to see a lot more of it. And I think what the digital thing will do is allow you to connect with your guest outside the box, so to speak, which I think is really crucial for the future. Once you've captured that guest, when they leave, if you haven't done something that you can maintain that relationship and give them something that will drive them back, usually in a gamified manner, where maybe they're creating a character they can come back and use at a place, or they're creating some kind of power-ups and things like that that can be used when they come back to a theme park or an FEC, something like that. That's going to be a big key to that kind of future relationship and the repeatability aspect that we all crave.
Yeah, it's fascinating because that's very much the direction that we've taken our company in. So the games arena, the analogy that I use is a games arena is the video game console, and then the games in which you can inculcate then allow you to have infinite repeatability within that space, and therefore endless content for the consumer, which is
right.
Which is the most important thing, that they can come back and have a varied experience.
And the consumer, Tom, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you said something that's so important. I just wanted to jump on it. The consumer and what you're talking about is now part of deciding what the experience will be. And I think that is so crucial. But that we've been talking a lot about that by going back to some of like the earliest of early, FECs, like a bowling alley. Why is a bowling alley still do well in so many places? Some, I'm not saying some don't suffer, but nonetheless, it's because the consumer is in 100% control of the experience. You might have one lane with somebody who has got that thing on and can roll the ball right on the edge, and it curves and makes a strike every time. And then you got somebody next to them who might be, practically a 2 or 3 year old who rolls the ball between their legs.
Yeah.
So they're creating the experience that they want to have. And we need to take that into account, and digital means can help allow the consumer to customize it more.
I've never thought of that, actually, Jeffrey. I think you're absolutely right. I think that autonomy, yes, you're in someone else's space, but I mean, you literally have your own lane. Like, that's
exactly
really interesting. I've never thought of it like that. And the other thing that I would add on as an equally of equal greater import, I would say, is the fact that in your lane, you're with your 8 mates. You can have a chat, then you can have a game, then you can come back and have a chat. But it's your space and it's shared. That's why actually we've never really, maybe I'm sort of putting my head on the block here, but we've never been big fans of VR ever, because actually I think it's a little antisocial. I've been far more interested in everything we do is now on a big arena type scale, but augmented reality, 360 digital projection, where you can keep that conviviality is hugely sort of important to where I think things are going. But the tech's getting better, right? Technology will keep getting better, and I think we're building to a world where maybe you could change your experience or make your experience bespoke while you're doing it. That's quite an interesting future.
Yeah, I think the innovation, if I could interject, going back to innovation and the idea that IP proliferates across boundaries. I mean, it becomes global almost instantly in most cases. There's a couple of things that strike me. One is, American IP tends to inform a lot of the market, but there's a lot of IP out there that is going to start to trickle across our shores and we could start to develop it as well. But another big part of this, guys, is innovation. You look at KSA right now and all the building that's going on there and the investment, there's innovation that's going to come out of that no one else would be able to get to at that kind of level. I mean, they're going to places we've dreamed about for years. So yeah, there's always a trickle down effect from those investments that starts to benefit, parks and regional parks and LBE all the way down, that will be informing our futures and how we adapt things going forward. It also takes me back, because like my kids, like recently we were somewhere where there was a forced perspective on a back lot. And they're like, what the heck is that? It looks tall, but it's not. Like, studying something static like that never even occurred to them. Like, wait a minute, matte painting, a forced perspective. Like, wow, I didn't even know this existed, because they're so prevalent and live in a digital space. They can see that something so simple could be so effective. So I think always, like Jeffrey pulled us back into a bowling alley. It's much like, how do we pull people back to the basics? And maybe there's unique digital overlays to that as they explore what things had been versus today and together.
Yeah, that's a nice idea, actually, that despite our innovations and despite progress in technology, there'll always be a marriage between new and old, and actually there'll always be a desire, no matter the generation, for some nostalgia too. And some of the old tricks are the best, Matt. You're right.
Yeah, they are.
Look at things like, as the digital world progresses, gaming progresses, Lego's not out of business. Probably Lego's in better shape than it's ever been. And building Lego blocks is as simple can be. Now they do have other things you can add, electronics and stuff to it. But in its simplistic form, that still has grown, and they've made content out of it. So I do think it's ultimately a lot about balance.
This conversation has been lovely, actually. It's all been very positive. Is there anything negative about what's going on? Is there anything that concerns you? Are there any sort of trends that you think maybe your business might be facing that you may struggle with, or anything that is concerning?
No, everything's fantastic. No, I'm kidding.
Piece of cake, come on.
Of course. I mean, we're concerned about what we don't know. Which is, we're continuing to learn, the impact of, the economy and forcing people to make choices. And again, those behavioral things that we see will eventually shift. We hope and we believe. But there's still a lot that is unknown. There's still a lot because there's so much competition out there. There's incredible content being made on so many different kinds of platforms. That draws. There's incredible gaming being made. That draws. There's so many different options, again, depending on the market that you're in. So yeah, there are challenges, as there always have been. Now they're probably more and new as we are trying to figure all this out. But when you get down to it, that basic instinct is still there. People like to be together. People like to do social things and be part of communities. And a lot of these LB experiences are almost the new kind of town square, if you will. It's a meeting place. And it's a place that you can maybe escape to a degree from your daily life, or emulate a character that you've been a fan with, or enter a story that you've been a fan of. And I think that's always been of interest to people since they were sitting around the campfire.
Sure. And Matt, do you think, following on from that, do you think there's any other challenges?
No, I echo Jeffrey's sentiment. I think it's all about how we continue to do what we're doing well, but also watch the marketplace. I think if there's one thing, it's watching the marketplace and what's happening in it. And I do pay close attention. Having been a Universal and Disney guy, what are they doing in this space? Because it's a big playing field. But when the bigger guns with that IP start to get into it, how does that impact it? But how do we continue to carve out a unique space? I think innovation is going to form it. But there's basic things. Like, as a marketer, I'm like, how do I keep marketing and engaging people in such a noisy environment? This will be an effervescent, evergreen challenge for every marketer on the planet. but with unique IP and unique technology, that constant curation and experimentation with our guests, and also making sure that we tailor it market by market, because it's not as simple as just taking Nerf from New Jersey and dropping it in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. The market's totally different. So how do you customize that both from the marketing side, but experiential side, and take advantage of that and optimize it? And that roadmap is one that we think got a lot, not a problem or a challenge, but a unique one to figure out case by case, market by market. But the other things that pop up, it's as an operator, we're operators, so staffing and making sure that we've got a strong stream of candidates coming through to keep these experiences alive and exciting. That'll always be a challenge. But the future's bright. No pun intended with bright.
The nice way to throw it.
The future is bright.
Very good.
No, I think this industry is nothing but opportunity, and that's exciting because there's just so much room and space for it, and there's an appetite for it. So we're not forcing anybody to do anything. We're offering something that they want, and that's exciting.
Seeing as we are all here, is there anything about your particular businesses? Is there any new location or any new show that you guys are involved with that you can sort of share with us? We are particularly proud of our Pac-Man Live that's going to launch in Manchester and Dubai early next year. You guys have to come. Everyone has to come. It's absolutely insane. It's amazing. But is there anything that you guys can share with us now about what you guys are doing?
From our standpoint, a lot of our focus has been on water parks and FECs and theme park attractions. But next year will be our first immersive shows and live experiences will start to open. So we're doing an exhibition for The Nanny, which will start in January in Australia. We just started selling tickets for our Insidious show, which is actually going quite well, and a good example of the value of IP. So if we announced a show just called Scare Me or something like that, you would take a lot more marketing to get the audience to understand what the show is. We announced the Insidious, immersive horror experience. Well, we've done 5 Insidious movies and they're doing incredibly well. So we have a big fan base. So instantly you started selling tickets. And I think that's a big difference. And then our first Ghostbusters show, which is a live immersive experience, will actually open in London towards the end of next year. So, and we've got about 5 others in either development or negotiation right now. So that's a big push for us. And that's kind of where a lot of our first efforts in this area will start to open up, will be next year.
Fantastic. I think you're doing that with George, who's a good friend of mine.
We are, and he's doing a fantastic job. George Wood at Luna Cinema.
Yeah, he's okay. And Matt, is there anything that you can tell us about or share?
Sure. Yeah. And before I dive in, Jeffrey, I just want to make note of Ghostbusters. I opened the original Universal Studios Florida, and the Ghostbusters attraction that we had was out of this world. I mean, it was,
oh, wow.
Again, using basic technology of reflective to create ghosts. Like, it was a great show. So I look forward to seeing what you're doing in London.
Great. Thank you.
For us, I've mentioned a couple of projects. We've opened Planet Play School in New Jersey, but coming next year, big projects. Nerf, the first U.S. introduction of Nerf action experience, which again will be adjacent to Planet Play School at Westfield's Garden State Plaza in New Jersey, Paramus, New Jersey. That's a 40,000 square foot footprint and all new gaming experiences there. So that's very exciting for us and for Hasbro as an introduction. And a version of that also to open next year in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. And that will be combined with our other IP partner, which is Crayola, and opening a Crayola experience in Pigeon Forge, which again will be next year. And additionally, the year after that, in partnership with Crayola, is another experience that'll come in Texas, in the Dallas area. Right now, there is a Crayola experience there, but part of what we're doing with Crayola as their first licensee is helping them rethink and reshape the future of that brand experientially. They've had these 5 locations for a long time, and now there's a desire and a need, and it's happening, a 2.0 version, using new technology and innovation to enhance the experience. So those are our big ones. But big picture for BRITE, we have a roadmap built out through 2030 to be operating about 27 to 30 of these, primarily in the U.S., but starting to expand globally. So we have high expectations and focus on growth in the future around these brands and with IP partners. And we're not just focused on kids, guys. We're opening up the IP to work with folks that cover all the demographics, and we're excited about that. We see it all coming like a freight train of growth that we're a part of and riding on one of the cars.
Superb. I think I want to go. I think there's going to need to be a little ticket swap going on here, guys. So
fair enough.
Between Ghostbusters, Nerf, and Pac-Man, I think we need to do a swapsy. Okay, well, I think that's about all we've got time for. So, wanted to thank absolutely everyone who's tuned in to watch this. Thanks so much to Jeffrey and to Matt. And without further ado, we will now be passing on to the winners of this year's Game On category award. Good luck to all the contestants.
And now the winners of the 2024 blooloop Innovation Awards Game On category. Third place, Beat the Bomb. Second place, Nexus by Gel Blaster. First place, Space Marine VR Defenders of Avarax from Zero Latency VR. Congratulations to all of the winners.